Good morning. Thank you for attending today's webinar, Construction Pros Guide to ELD Compliance, presented by BSM Technologies and hosted by Equipment Today magazine, the commercial construction industry's leading equipment and technology information resource, and forconstructionpros.com, the construction industry's top web portal. My name is Becky Schultz, and I'm the editor of Equipment Today. Before we start, here's a brief overview of what you can expect during the presentation. Today's program will consist of a series of slides with live audio from our presenter. There will also be poll questions throughout that we encourage you to answer to further the discussion. We've reserved time at the end to address your questions. Questions can be submitted at any time using the question box on your screen, and our presenter will answer as many as possible during the time allotted. If he's unable to get to your question, it will be addressed offline following the event. If you have technical difficulties at any time during the program, please contact us via the question box and someone will assist you. Please note that an archived version of this webinar, including the slides shown, will be posted on forceconstructionpros.com roughly 24 hours from now. Now, I'd like to introduce our presenter, Brendan Shaw, ELD expert and Executive Vice President at BSM Technologies. Brendan has over 20 years of experience in technology regulations and is often a guest speaker at industry events. Prior to BSM, Brendan worked for various companies focused on regulation in such areas as pharmaceutical, transportation, and telecom. Brendan, thank you for joining us. I'll turn the program over to you at this point.
Thank you, Becky. I appreciate it. Thank you all for joining. This is meant to be kind of an educational session. We're going to talk about what are ELDs and why they're needed, and more specifically, kind of concentrate on the construction rules and the mandate under construction, what some of the differences are, and then things to consider, things we've seen in the industry to consider as you start moving forward with this ELD mandate. So really, what is ELD? ELD is electronic logging device, is what it really stands for, and it's a replacement for the AOBRD wireless regulation that was put in place several years ago. The main component here is taking a paper log and moving into an electronic log. So the ELDs have to connect up to the engine. They have to basically have the driver moves coming from the vehicle itself. So it's automatically tracking the duty status. This was announced in December, and we'll go through the compliance components of this as we start moving through the deck. The big thing with why ELD is really put in place for a number of reasons, the main reason being driver fatigue. Obviously, there's a lot of accidents. There's a lot of information from the government that was really pushing to have some more regulation from the standpoint of accidents while on the job itself. So if you look at the top things here, it's cutting down on the number of accidents and injuries, but for you in the construction industry, it can also lead to project delays. So something to point out there. So it's not only making things safer for your work environment, but also making sure that your jobs also come online in the right timelines.
We've come to our first poll question. The question is, do you believe you are affected by the ELD mandate? Our responses are yes, no, or undecided. We'll give you a moment here to register your response. And it looks like 50% of you said yes. Only 16.7% said no, and 33.3% are undecided. Brendan, I'll
That's
give it
great.
back to you.
Thanks, Becky, and I think that's a good segue into the next section here. And you were all correct. It is the law, so you are mandated to have this. We'll talk about some of these specifics, then we'll get into the actual rules as we start moving forward. So those of you that answered yes, that is correct. It is in fact the law. So some other things to kind of consider here as you're starting to look at ELD, is really put in place for worker safety. So the fatigue management, the less accidents, loss of life, things of that sort are really what the whole regulation was built around. But for you as a company, it has other benefits, looking at eliminating fines and violations when it comes to inspections or duty hours. The fines are quite steep now on the ELD side. It's $2,500 per incident and $11,000 per company. So you can see as that can add up if you're not keeping good records or if you have inspections that are out of date or trucks that are out of date. So additional benefits, keeping up with the record keeping, vehicle downtime, and obviously cost savings as it leads to that. So looking at some of the real benefits that you get from an ELD side is maximizing utilization of the vehicle. You can do things such as geofencing repair shops and knowing when a vehicle goes into that repair shop and is down for a certain period of time. So allow you to work with your vendors to get vehicles turned around quickly. Project forecasting, being able to take the data that you get from the telematics from the ELD system to accurately integrate to your business systems. So taking in that data, being able to use that for your own job costing and other criteria when it comes to the vehicle information. You look at the operational increases, again, using geolocations and engine hours, you can better attain maintenance, looking at, different reports for better business decisions based on that data. Again, with ELD, you're tracking your geolocations as part of your hours and duty status changes, so being able to utilize that to provide additional value add is key. The other one is a big one, and that's the fuel cost. Obviously, it's one of the largest spends with most customers. So being able to reduce idling fuel, detect things like theft, you're using a vehicle or an asset after hours, you can basically set up different parameters in order to track that information. The other big one, which isn't highlighted here, is safety. Again, it kind of goes in line with driver fatigue, but you're able to use the ELD systems that providers provide for things like speed, posted speed, acceleration, braking, being able to track the physical driver performance of the vehicle itself. So to answer the main question that everyone had in that poll question was, are you affected? The fact is, all commercial motor vehicles, as defined by 390.5, vehicles over 10,000 pounds, or vehicles carrying 9 or more passengers, or transporting hazardous materials are all affected. So that covers a very large group of drivers. It's 3.1 million trucks and 3.4 million drivers. So we're going to delve into these as we move forward through the presentation, but I'm glad a lot of you do think that you are affected because this, again, is a very broad ELD regulation.
We move on to our next poll question then, and we'd like to know, do you currently have an existing AOBRD solution? If you could please answer yes or no, and we'll again give you a moment to respond to this. And it looks like only 7.7% said yes, and 92.3% currently do not have an AOBRD solution. Brendan?
Great, thanks, Becky. So let's kind of review what we just talked about is why ELD. Obviously the mandate was put forward having to do with safety of the workers themselves, and then we also talked about the fact that it is law and the automation of HOS. Now let's get into the focus of the rules themselves, which address that last question that we just had. So when you look at the ELD mandate, there's really kind of two areas on the federal side that we comply with. One of those is the property carrying rule set, which is 11 hours of drive time, 14 consecutive hours, or 10 consecutive days of off-duty time. You're required to take a 30-minute break, and there's two regulations that you're able to use, and that's 60 hours in a 7-day cycle or 70 hours in an 8-day cycle. All have to have a 34-hour restart. So that's on the property carrying side. On the passenger carrying side, there's a little bit of a different rule set. It's only 10 hours of drive time, 14 hours of on-duty, 8 consecutive hours of off-duty, and the same two rule sets apply, 60 hours in a 7-day cycle or 70 hours in an 8-day cycle, and you don't have the 34-hour restart or break. So those are the two main groups that we'll talk through as we start looking at the regulation, where that regulation is at. So some things to remember here. When you look at the ELD side of things, Basically, the vehicle itself has to mandate the changes to the duty cycle. So automatically capturing power, motion, miles, and hours in order to calculate the drive time associated to those drivers themselves. Drivers must be able to log in and out to select their status. So I come in the morning, I put myself into a non-duty status, I start driving. The vehicle should automatically put that particular driver into a driving status. All those devices must have the ability to show others the hours of service in an easy readable format. So basically what ELD is transforming the paper logs in an automated fashion to electronic logs. So you'll see that as you start moving forward here in some of the benefits that you see from that standpoint. There are about 171 regulations in the new ELD mandate. The reason we asked that question about AOBRD is you are grandfathered in with an extension if you already have a solution in place. And we'll cover that off when we get into some of the other regulation here. But 171 individual requirements in the ELD mandate cover things like ghost trips for drivers that are driving that have not signed in. You have to be able to capture that data. The driver harassment rule set that's in the 171 individual requirements basically makes you have to mask their off-duty location if they're outside of a work area. So again, there's a lot of specific components that you need to look at when you're looking at different vendors and providers for the ELD side of things. Let's get into construction itself and some of the differences with construction in the rule sets that apply. So we covered off federal, which is what we talked about before, but there's a number of different nuances in the construction space itself. For a good example of that is if you're towing a vehicle that has a GVWR of over 10,000 with a combined weight, and I'll cover that in more detail in the next slide, you'll basically have to have regulated logs. You also in construction also apply for the air exemption, or what's referred to as the short haul rule exemption, and that's a 150 air mile radius or 100 air mile radius for commercial drivers. And what that basically means, if you do business within the 150 or 100 air mile radius, you don't have to actually have a physical graph log. You're able to basically utilize the system to track your on-duty and off-duty time, and you're also not required to put in a 30-minute break. Again, we'll cover that individually as we get into that. Drivers that use paper rods no more than 8 days during a 30-day period, another benefit you have under construction. And then you also have the drive-away, tow-away operation that's out there. And then also vehicles that are older than model year 2000 are not required to have ELD on them. So diving into it a little bit further, we talked about what we refer to as kind of a towing rule. It's very common out there in the construction industry in particular. For instance, I have a pickup. It's a Ford F-250, and I drive the first 4 days of my cycle around a job site. Well, technically, it's under your 10,000 GVRW. You're not required to have a graph log. However, as soon as I hook up and tow this, in this case, a Kubota you see there, I'm basically now moving over that 10,000-pound weight limit and will be required to have a graph log. So something to consider there. Most of the construction companies that we work with are looking at outfitting all of their vehicles so that when this rule set comes in or they do end up towing, which is common again in the construction industry, you have this covered and are able to have graph logs in the actual vehicle itself. So again, a good component there to offer, something to consider when you look at the regulation. The other one that we talked about was air radius, and the air radius component is basically looking at putting a geographical circle or a radius around your work area. And basically allows you to go drive around that within that 100 or 150 air mile radius. You're exempt from having your 30-minute break until you breach that area. Once you breach this circle in this particular diagram you see here, you would be regulated by either your state or federal regulation, depending on which regulation you're going with. So this is something to consider when you're looking at providers to make sure that they do cover the air mile radius rule set. Again, very common in construction, as most of the time you're on a job site for a long period of time. You'd want to take advantage of this rule set here. So drivers driving within that radius are exempt. They don't have to do a 30-minute break. The other thing to consider when you're looking at different providers out there is to make sure that the providers have the ability to track that information. A good example, if you're using the air mile radius, but your job site maybe reaches right close to that 100-mile radius and you're using the 100 air mile radius exemption, you want to make sure you have the ability of tracking the drive time or hours in case you go outside of that. If you go outside of that radius set itself, then you basically have to go back and put in all of your drive time associated to that. So again, something to consider there is even though you're not using are required to have a graph log, if you do go outside of that, you have to go back and put in what the rule sets are. One thing that I didn't cover, we talked a lot about the AOBRD in the last one, and there's a slide coming up that goes into a little bit more detail. But AOBRD was automated logs that was passed about 3 years ago. And basically, we'll again cover this here in a bit, but what that allows you to do is get a 2-year extension on the ELD mandate. We did talk about the ELD mandate. It's law. Basically, it means that by December of this year coming up, December 2017, any vehicle on the road that fits this rule set will need to have an ELD-based solution. So AOBRD was the previous regulation, and what happens is if you do have that previous solution put in place, it gives you a 2-year extension to upgrade to ELD. Again, I'll cover that here in a minute. When you look at ELD, some things to look and consider here are some of the other areas that you can take advantage of. So, for instance, when you look at the DVIRs, when part of the regulation, you're required to do what's referred to as a pre-trip or a post-trip. And these two are different inspections that are done on the vehicle. So you want to make sure that the solution you're looking at offers flexibility. There's a number of different things out there that are available from different vendors. The DOT requires 12 different inspection points on a vehicle. However, you may have trucks that have different types of scenarios where you might want to look at different types of inspections. So make sure that your vendors give you the flexibility to have custom menus, custom questions per vehicle or asset type. A good example, that's a boom truck. You may not be required by law to inspect the boom hydraulics, the boom cradle, but as a company regulation, you may want to inspect different components on that boom truck, such as the ones we mentioned. So being able to have the flexibility of having different inspections or DVIRs for the exact type of vehicle or spec that you have out there. So being able to push different inspection forms to different vehicle types. The other things you see up here are different barcodes that are available, or what's referred to as NFC tags, which is near field communication. These are two different examples that vendors have of ways to go around the vehicle to create circle checks. What that basically means is you're putting a barcode or NFC tag around the vehicle, and you're forcing the driver to get out and do a circle check of that vehicle. So I start at the front of the vehicle, I walk around that vehicle, and I'm scanning different inspection points or using NFC tags to scan different inspection points as you start moving forward. So we need to make sure that we're basically going through this. You're looking at the different inspections that are per specification, and then you're using additional items here to make sure that they're going outside those vehicles. So some of the fringe benefits of this are you're timing the inspections, so you know that they're physically getting out and how long it takes them to do an inspection, and you're also scanning those locations. So again, it gives you the capabilities of going through and offering that capability to the drivers. While you're getting out of the vehicle and using kind of what we refer to as a mobile inspection, it also offers some additional flexibility. So if you're using a mobile inspection, some of the vendors also allow you to take pictures of any defects. So you can flag defects by taking images of the defect itself, which would then be integrated to your internal maintenance systems or to your ERP system on the back end. So in this particular case, you see here this particular driver got out, he walked around, he found out he had something wrong with the seatbelt. Well, you can take a picture of the seatbelt. The picture then goes back to the actual back-end system. So as a maintenance manager, I know that I need to bring a new cable, a new buckle out to that vehicle when I go repair it. So just to spend a little bit of time talking about that, as you probably well know with the mandate, any pre-trip that has a major defect, that vehicle is not allowed to be driven. So it's very important when you look at the ELD solution in these vendors that you have some flexibility of how you're able to capture that information. Is it real-time alerts that go off to your maintenance center? Is it an integrated system that goes back to your maintenance center? All that information basically brings back to a central point, allowing the drivers or the maintenance folks to look at the issues that might be in a vehicle and eliminate how long that vehicle is off the road. So the key thing with most businesses is, the longer that vehicle's off the road, the less money I'm making. So again, keeping up on that and allowing the flexibility with a solution that's going to allow you to pass that information off to make quicker business decisions on the information. Another advantage to the DVIR component is being able to use it for other asset types. So if you think back a couple slides ago, we talked about the towing rule and the ability to basically flag when you're towing something. Well, if you are towing something, that particular item that you're towing, whether it's a trailer with a skid steer on it, whatever the case may be, does need to be inspected as part of the DOT requirements. So make sure that the vendor you're looking at has a flexibility that if you're towing, it will automatically trigger an inspection form for a trailer or specific other asset. So again, giving you the flexibility with the investment that you're using for ELD to check other items as you move forward. The same thing applies to other asset types. So in construction, obviously, you have light stands, you have lifts, you have generators, you have a lot of different types of assets that might be out there and in construction site. By using the flexibility with the applications that are available, you can also look at using the inspection forms to inspect other assets rather than just vehicles themselves. So again, making sure that your vendor has the ability to look at other types of assets, being able to inspect those to get further information and utilize the functionality that you're putting in place to be able to have other capabilities outside of just the vehicle side. We talked about this briefly, but I wanted to elaborate a little bit on the functionality we have here. So when you look at the regulation, there are basically several components to it. You can almost think of it as a hierarchy. You have obviously the federal mandate, which is the ELD mandate, but as most people know, the states also have their own particular mandates. So it's very important that the states that you're in, the locations that you're in, and if you comply with the federal or the state side, to make sure that the vendors you're looking at do have state-based compliance. Each state has a different set of rules. Here's an example of Texas. Texas has a 2,601-pound limit. The drive time is 12 hours, 8 hours of off-duty. On-duty time is 15 hours after 8 hours of off-duty, and they basically only use the 150-mile air exemption. So that is a regulation specific to Texas. So if you're doing business just in Texas, you'd probably want to go and use the Texas rule set. But it's very common with other states. New York has a different rule set, Florida, Georgia, California. So as you're looking at these components, you want to make sure that you're considering whether you're going with state-based regulation or you're going with federal regulation. The other main component here to consider is that you're making sure that your regulation follows the way that you do business. And what I mean by that is we covered a number of different things off so far. We've covered off separate rules for construction. So you're using the air radius rule because your job site is within 100 miles of where your location is. Then you're looking at a potential of using a state regulation, and then you have federal. So you have to look at the hierarchy of the rule set itself. So if I'm using the air radius mileage, use the state-based regulation, and then I move to federal. And what will happen is if I go outside of my air radius using the air radius rule, I then move to the different regulation from a state perspective, and then I move to the regulation on the federal side. So again, you have a hierarchy of rule sets, and it's important that you make sure that when you're working with vendors that they meet your business requirements and how you do business. So throw in just one more example, and that is if you're using a bunch of different types of light-duty vehicles, such as the 350s or 250s that we talked about before. So now you're adding yet another piece of into that hierarchy of the rule sets. So now I go by the towing rule. So if I'm under 10,000 pounds and I start towing something, then I move into maybe an air radius rule. From that air radius rule, I move to state compliance. In state compliance, I move out to federal. So again, something to consider there as you're starting to move forward. You need to make sure that you follow the rule set, and the rule sets with the providers are inaccurate with your business. So we're going to talk real quickly on brakes, just to get a little bit of clarity around the brakes and what's available from a brake perspective. So on the construction side, this applies to all property carrying drivers. So basically what it means is you're required to take a 30-minute break within your duty cycle for that 8-hour day. So everyone's required to take that break. Most vendors have a countdown clock that's built into their application. So as you're on your break, you hit the countdown clock, and it's going to automatically put your 30-minute break in line. It's also important to make sure that you have the coaching capabilities with the application on the back end. So if someone does not take a 30-minute break, they're approaching the end of their cycle, that you're able to catch that and coach that driver, especially early on, and we'll talk about that through some of our lessons learned. The other one is drivers using split sleeper. Most construction companies don't use this regulation, but for those that do, that maybe have some long-haul type vehicles, there is an exception for sleeper split berth. And then the other exception is drivers can be on duty for brakes. So in construction, some of the wait time capabilities, you're able to actually physically be on duty but taking your 30-minute break. And as we discussed with the air radius rule, you're exempt from the 30-minute break if you're using that air radius exemption. The only time that you would need to move into that is if, in fact, you did move outside of that rule set. You would need to basically be able to do that. The other component that we didn't really talk a whole lot about here that's worth addressing is the personal conveyance rule. With personal conveyance, it basically means that the vehicles are going home with the drivers, and they have the capabilities of using that particular vehicle for off-road or for non-work driving. So I got to run to Home Depot on the weekend to buy supplies to do a home project. So make sure that the vendors you're looking at also have the personal conveyance rule set so that you can, in fact, utilize that rule set as well. And what that basically means is it'd be a separate application or button in some of the ELD applications, which allow you to track up to 75 miles of off our personal conveyance time within a duty cycle. So kind of important to look at, again, just reviewing some of those components. You want to look at the air radius exemption, the personal conveyance, the interstate versus federal, and making sure you're complying with your brakes. So we covered off quite a bit here. We covered off, why ELDs. We talked about the driver fatigue aspect of it, the fact that it's the law. We talked about the different rules specifically for construction, including air radius, personal conveyance, the interstate versus federal, as well as the brakes themselves. Now we'll talk about some of the lessons learned, some of the different components out there that you need to look at and consider as you start moving forward with regulation. So one of the biggest ones to consider here is what you're looking at and what you might already have on from a standpoint of tablet in a vehicle. Most of the ELD applications work across a tablet or a fixed-mounted tablet in a vehicle. So that is what's referred to as the ELD. That's the actual physical logging device. So you can think of an iPad. You can think of a Galaxy tablet. Those components are things that you need to look at. So you have to think about your business itself. Do you have something you use already for, your construction work orders? So can I use that tablet that I already have existing? Does it operate on the common operating systems, which are basically iOS, which is your Apple, your Android, or your Windows? So, can I coexist with an existing application? Do I need to look at buying a new tablet as a separate investment? Will their software work on the different operating system that I have? Then you need to consider things like the mobile aspect of it versus fixed. Some of the things that we talked about early on in the presentation were some of the fringe benefits of using the device and walking around the vehicle to do your circle checks, to do your DVIRs, to use QR codes and take pictures of defects. All of those would require a mobile-based solution. You also have fixed-based solutions, which basically means I'm wiring and cabling it into the vehicle itself. I don't want the driver to get that and use that outside of there for theft reasons, for instance. So you have to consider, one, what operating system do I want to go on? Do I want to go the route of mobile or fixed, and what the benefits and the benefits apply to me? And then the other component you need to look at is the integration capabilities. Do I want to integrate this information to my business systems? What integration do the vendors have that's available? Can I integrate this to my maintenance system? Can I integrate this directly into my ERP system? So it really gives you some flexibility and some things to consider as you start working with the solutions out there. And obviously, considering the timelines, these are decisions that probably need to be made sooner than later. So just to recap, I would look at your OS first. If you have tablets, then can we use those? And then you make the consideration of using the mobile component if the vendor offers that, or the fixed component, and looking at the benefits of either one of those, along with the integration capabilities. So we talked a lot about the timeline. And we put this under the things to consider, which we could have probably led with this. But the final rule came out in December 10th, 2015. And basically it says you have 2 years to comply. So any vehicle that meets that regulation that we've been talking about has to have a system installed by the end of December 2015. We talked about the AOBR side, which was released back here in the 2014 timeline. If you have already made an investment in the AOBRD side, which is the onboard automated logs, you have an additional 2 years to upgrade that to the latest solution. So if you look at this, it is really a pretty tight timeline. You have 2 years to comply, which means if you haven't started now, depending on your fleet size, it's something you need to look at and consider. If you do have a solution, you can basically continue to hang on to that solution for another 2 years beyond that deadline. So again, this is very important. I don't think a lot of people understand that this is a hard rule set. There's been lots of, kind of back and forth with the government on different extensions, but so far everything has been shot down. So this is a hard requirement in 2 years from the date, which was December of 2015. So basically December 2017, each individual vehicle must have an ELD-based solution if you fall under the rule set that we spoke about. Some other things to consider and some challenges that we've seen out there with people putting solutions in place. Probably the biggest change here is the training aspect of it. You want to make sure that you have obviously management support, IT support, along with driver support, that this is regulation, this is something that needs to be done, that you're able to comply with this, and that you have the support of management behind you. We've seen different people implement solutions that don't have management oversight, and the drivers are resistant to it. So again, the big advantage here is if your management is on board, they're helping coach these drivers live in real time, you're able to see a much larger success rate than folks using the ELD-based solution. Most of the solutions out there are created to be easy to use for the driver. That's the big focus here with ELD, making it easy for the drivers to utilize. You also want to look at other training programs and information that might be available to you to train the drivers or from the vendors. So looking at video support, videos of how the application is utilized. Do those videos stay on your own internal network? Can you easily access those to train drivers? Documentation. Here's an example of a guide that's left in a vehicle for the drivers to refer to. Hey, how do I do my inspection? How do I change different log settings? So it's very important that you have the right training program put in place, but more importantly, you have management behind it. You need to basically be able to look at things like, drivers that are firing regulations, the audits of the daily logs, especially when you first start in the pilot environment or when you first start with the first phase of implementation, to make sure that those programs are well defined, make sure that there's action there for the managers to take based on the driver performance. If a driver is continually not signing into his vehicle as he's driving, if he isn't doing his pre-trip or post-trip inspection, that there are ways put in place to coach those drivers to really help them learn the system and make sure that things are moving smoothly as you move from phase to phase throughout the application. We talked about management support. This is a kind of a big component here. You need someone that's going to monitor the logs and the defects on a daily basis, and that might be different types of management. You might have a compliance officer monitoring the logs themselves. Different vendors have different components set up where they might have a dashboard to basically be able to see what people are doing on an hourly or minute-by-minute basis. You also have email as well as text alerts that can be set up to track the driver performance themselves. Are they submitting the logs? Are they not submitting the logs? Running an audit report on a daily basis. So that's kind of the compliance piece of it to make sure that those components are being done properly. The other one you have to look at is the defects. So when we talk about the defects, the DVIRs, the pre-trips and post-trips, you need someone to monitor those defects. Again, the longer a vehicle is down, the more money it means out of your pocket. So being able to monitor the defects in a real-time fashion when they come in, being able to get that vehicle repaired and back out on the road again in a quick manner. So keep that into consideration to make sure your maintenance managers are on board as you're starting to look at solutions. Make sure that the vendors have an integration or a capability to flag those defects in real time. Making sure, are you using the picture capability or not using the picture capability? Is there a way to determine additional notes so that you can alert the maintenance manager of what he needs to bring to go visit a truck? So if a truck's out at a job site and they're doing their pre-trip inspection and something has gone awry, you need the ability to give the tools to the person there on site to be able to fix that vehicle to get it back on the road again. Coaching the drivers, we talked about this one. This is a big one, and you're going to have probably multiple phases of a training program. You're going to look at training drivers probably live, making sure that they have the application, walking through those components with the driver one by one, making sure they understand it, and then maybe some webinars set up on a weekly basis as you start rolling this forward so that you can actively see how they're adopting to the application, what might need to be tweaked or changed on that application. So again, you need to have someone that's going to be your evangelist to coach drivers real time. And then the right processes. What happens if you do get an audit? What happens if someone gets pulled over? Making sure that you have the right processes for your drivers in place to minimize downtime, also to make sure that they're following the right rules. You have many different ways of utilizing the ELD-based logs, again, depending on the vendor and their capability. So just walking through kind of a day in the life of the driver, they're going to get into their vehicle, they're going to log in, that's going to put them into a non-duty status. Then they're going to go out and they're going to do their pre-trip inspection. So they're going to physically walk around that vehicle. They're going to check those inspection points. Again, if you're using the inspection capability outside of the vehicle, they'll flag any defects. If those defects are flagged, obviously there needs to be a process in place to take care of those defects. If there are no defects, he gets in his vehicle and he goes off on his day. As soon as he starts driving, it puts him into that driving status. They start moving forward with their day. They may stop and start 100 different times. At the end of the day, they come back to their end location. They put themselves off duty. They do a post-trip inspection, and then they sign their log. Once they sign that log, that then comes back to the back-end systems that are available from the different vendors, and that is processed and audited from that standpoint. So again, making sure all those moving parts have different processes, how to flag that, how to move forward, and the different components that you need in order to make that be successful.
We've reached our next poll question. In this question, we'd like to know, are you actively looking for an ELD solution? Please indicate yes, no, or undecided. Our viewers have indicated 18.2% yes, 27.3% no, and 54.5% are undecided. Brendan?
Yeah, thanks, Becky. I think that's interesting. Obviously, as you start looking, hopefully this was a bit educational for you. We can kind of recap some of the things we looked at here. But when you look at the components here, it is the law. It is something that's going to have to be done. So we encourage those of you that are in the undecided realm to reach out to the various vendors that are out there. This is obviously something that's very high on most people's list. You have a plethora of vendors that are offering solutions. Again, my recommendation to you is making sure that you have taken into account all the considerations, your device types, are you going fixed or mobile, obviously the timelines that are out there, and then how you do business. Are you using the air radius? Does the vendor have air radius? Do the trucks go home and are using personal conveyance? Are you interstate versus federal? All of those things need to be considered as you move forward and as you start interviewing vendors. Again, keep in mind you have until December 2017, so there really isn't a large timeline to have a solution in place. So just a little bit about us. We've been around since 1995. We are basically have an entire vertical dedicated to construction. We have 3 of the top 5 Fortune 500 construction companies underneath us from the standpoint of utilizing our solution set. We have about 150 construction firms, again, utilizing what we have. One of the big things that kind of sets us apart is we work with mixed equipment. So when you look at the different requirements for a construction company when it comes to telematics, you have things like different types of skid steers, generators, light stands that go above and beyond just the ELD mandate that we've been talking about today. We have about 160,000 subscribers on our network, and we have offices throughout North America. So there is a number of things to consider when you're looking at vendors. Obviously, we're one of many, but making sure that all of those components comply with the way that you do business. So just as a recap before we get into questions, again, we're here to answer questions. We wanted to make this section educational. We wanted to really kind of talk through and give you some of the lessons learned with things to consider. Big thing, again, making sure that we have management buy-in, making sure that you define the right processes from day one, how drivers utilize the system, how managers would basically oversee those drivers, making sure that the ELD system that you're choosing complies with the way you do business. So looking at the air radius, the personal conveyance, the other components that are required from an ELD perspective, and then looking for the right solution for your business. If you're heavy on the inspection side and looking at the inspection capabilities, are you using it in the mobile sense? Are you taking advantage of the inspection points around a vehicle, whether they're NFC tags or barcodes? Are you using the capability of pictures and taking pictures of those components in order to speed up the repair times on vehicles? So those are all big things to consider there from that standpoint and how you do business. The other one that I'll throw out there to make sure that is kind of important, if you're making the investment in ELD technology, make sure it applies to other areas of your business. Can I use the inspection application to inspect generators and light stands that might be on site? Can I use that data and can I put telematics on those assets to basically be able to use maintenance, use time for those assets? Can I control those assets remotely when you look at mixed equipment? So when you're thinking of this and you're making the investment into ELD, make sure that you can utilize this for other aspects of your business. It's a large investment for ELD. Can I use it on other assets besides just my vehicles? So again, big things to consider there. I think at this time we have about 15 minutes left. We'll go ahead and open it up for questions.
Thank you, Brendan, for a very informative presentation. It's certainly given everyone a lot to think about. And I do see that we have some questions coming in, so we'll move directly into the Q&A session.
Yeah, so I already see some questions coming in. One of the first ones is, how long does the process take to purchase, install, and use an ELD solution?
That's a good question, Wajia. It really depends on the functionality that you're utilizing. There are simple install methods for a lot of the different types of vehicles out there, so you can install things within an hour. But again, there are other capabilities that go around that to the install process. I'll give you a quick example. If you're looking at different assets, such as a boom truck that we used before in the example, I may want to wire up to the boom. I may want to wire up to an onboard generator, or wire up to another component on there, such as a welder. So if you're going to wire up to other heavy machinery, that increases the install time, but also gives you a lot more capabilities and advantages. I can now get separate use time on my boom. I know when my boom is up or down. I can use that information for maintenance and utilization of the vehicle to detract idle time. So in general, purchase time is generally about 2 weeks to get equipment delivered from most vendors. Your install can take anywhere from half hour to 2 hours. And the training aspect, which is the big component we've been kind of harping on here, is probably the largest learning curve. We typically say for a driver, you're looking at about 2 hour investment into training, which can be done a multitude of different ways.
Great, thanks. Someone else here is asking, if I currently have an AOBR solution system, when do I have to upgrade to an ELD?
Yeah, we touched on that through the presentation there. But again, if you already have a solution in place and it is AOBRD, then you have the capabilities of getting that 2-year extension. So deadline is December 2017. That would get you out to December 2019. So again, giving you that 2-year extension in order to go through and upgrade your existing solution that's out there.
Thanks. And someone else is asking, is ELD just a software that we can utilize on our tablet? If so, where is the best place to research the software?
Yes, ELD is a software that can be used on a tablet. However, there does need to be a component connected to the vehicle. So again, as we mentioned before, the vehicle needs to mandate that driving status. So it has to be physically connected into the vehicle's engine diagnostic port. So it's referred to as ECM. On light-duty vehicles, it's a protocol referred to as ODB2, and on higher heavy-duty vehicles, it's a J-bus connectivity. So that would be the capability of being able to monitor the drive time associated with driver performance.
Awesome. And finally, someone's asking, if a truck is idling on site to keep materials warm, does that count towards driving hours?
Yeah, that's a good question. Again, that kind of goes back to the first question that was asked there is on the install side. So there are a number of different ways to wire up a vehicle. One of the things we do as a vendor is we detract idle time from use time. So if, in fact, you have to keep material warm, you might have some sort of connection to a thermometer, or there might be some other mechanism we're connecting to, we would deduct that idle time based on the use case from the actual idle time itself. So the easiest example that I can make is, again, using that boom truck scenario. If I have my truck idling and I'm using my boom truck and I'm using my generator, that information is all subtracted from idling. So if I'm using my truck, I obviously have to leave it running to use that equipment. So same scenario would apply there. If you are using your vehicle and it's required to be running, most vendors would subtract that from the idle time and give you what's referred to as good idle.
Awesome. I think that's all the questions that I see coming in. If anyone thinks of something else after the fact or after the presentation, they can email Brendan at his contact information. It should be on the screen soon. And then over to you, Becky.
I would like to conclude by thanking Brendan Shaw from BSM Technologies for joining us today, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking time to participate in our webinar today. As a reminder, an archived version of this webinar will be posted within roughly 24 hours on forconstructionpros.com. That's F-O-R, constructionpros, P-R-O-S.com. This concludes today's program. Thank you again.